Today, we are delighted to showcase amazing women and men of color throughout the retail arena. It is our goal that the attendees of the program today will be educated and inspired by our expert panelists who are once ambitious students just like you are now. I'm delighted to bring today's summit, starting off with our keynote conversation featuring two amazing women in the retail industry who I both personally know and have been inspired by throughout the course of their career. None other than Daria Burke, Chief Marketing Officer for Just Fab, and Danae Pearson, Senior Vice President, Global Marketing, Product Development, and Social at NYX Professional Makeup. And if we could have you both join on stage so we could do a fantastic fireside. So I want to briefly just kind of introduce you all in title, but one of the things I really want to do, and we'll start first with you, Daria, is we are putting this summit on to inspire the next generation of leaders in the retail sector. And both of you all are phenomenal leaders in this space. Would you please share with us a little bit more about your personal career journey, including your educational experiences and kind of how you got to your leadership posts?
Sure, I will try to make it brief. I'm like 100 years old. So I actually started my career, or started my education, and really, I suppose, my career at the University of Michigan. I was a literature major at Michigan, and I knew even then that I didn't want to do anything traditional, and I didn't know what that meant. And I came out of college at 20 years old and said, I want to do something creative, but I want a business role. And I graduated right before 9/11. And after having had kind of a myriad of experiences over my my undergraduate career in terms of working experience and internships, I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to go. So I wound up starting my career in the architecture and interior design industry, doing marketing and business development. And I think what I really loved about that was the multidisciplinary facets of that work. I got a chance to work with the head of corporate interiors, or the head of, our base building architecture practice, our head of higher ed. And I think in doing that, also understanding just how important it was to bring your love of your work in the spirit of serving other people. We were creating spaces for people to enjoy, to work in, to live in, to be productive in. And I love the storytelling aspect of that. But it wasn't really, when you're a marketer in a professional services environment, you're not really at the center of what's going on. You're not at the center of what's being created, or ultimately what's, going out into the world. And I didn't have P&L ownership either. And so it set me about this journey to really start to think about what I loved and what I spent my free time doing, and what were the things that were just naturally interesting to me. And I would spend my weekends at Sephora. And I was broke, I was like a broke, early 20s. And I was so deeply obsessed with beauty and fashion and how women shop and what they were consuming and why. And so from there, I decided that I really wanted to pivot my career marketing to women and in that beauty fashion space. And so I made that switch vis-a-vis business school. So I moved to New York. I was living in DC at the time, and started business school at NYU. I did a full-time MBA program there where I studied marketing and strategy. Did my MBA internship at L'Oreal, where I met Danae a very long time ago. We were both working on Lancome, and that really set the journey for me in terms of, going into this environment, seeing what it was possible to create, to produce. Danae was doing a lot of product development. I was like, I love this. This is so fun. And the marketing and the copy and the storytelling and all of it really was in this incredible role in marketing. And I was surrounded by really smart, really dope women. And I was like, these are my people. This is my tribe. So I had a chance to go back after graduation and started my career at L'Oreal, spent a couple years there between Lancome and YSL Beauté. And at YSL, really, that was where I started working in e-commerce. And that was kind of the merger for me of both brand and performance or acquisition marketing. And from there, I've had a series of really interesting moves, sort of shoelacing through e-com and retail and even tech, leading me to where I am now. And I think all of those experiences, between Rent the Runway runway where I was number 10 in the company. And, you want to talk about building from the ground up, and Natalie, you know this, but it's a lot. And really figuring out, how do you create a value proposition and create a story and a service that people will come back for, right? To have a viable business. I went back into beauty and spent a few years at Estee Lauder as the director of makeup marketing there. From there, I joined CVS, moved to Rhode Island, left New York for 2 years, and headed up their beauty and personal care strategy, and got pulled back to New York when I had an opportunity to actually lead beauty, fashion, and retail partnerships at Facebook. Thought I would stay there forever, had the best time working with heads of digital, CMOs, heads of e-com, heads of media on their growth strategy with digital and mobile in mind specifically, until I got the call for my dream job, and and this opportunity to move to Los Angeles as the chief marketing officer at JustFab, where now I oversee global brand awareness for a 10-year-old brand, and very much deep in the middle of reimagining what our voice and visual signature are, and then customer acquisition as well. So again, really fully merging and bringing together in full circle, in a way, all of the things that I've done, throughout my career.
I love it. It's funny, you started off by saying I'm 100 years old. It's not, you're not 100 years old by any extent.
I'm older, which is
You have a fantastic set of many different experiences in your career, and I love that. And so, Danae, if you could share with us just a little bit about you, your background, your educational experience, and what you're doing today.
My journey was very interesting. I started off not knowing, what I wanted to do. I just liked to work. Like, I loved to create. I loved business. I just I was always a worker. And I was in a program called Inroads. And so I was being, you were being, taught how to dress for success and how to interview. And so there was an opportunity at L'Oreal, and I interned while I was in college. So I was a sophomore at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Hey, Jersey people. And I was, I was out in the sales team going store to store. At the time, there were makeup artist events in Bloomingdale's. And I would, I just learned beauty through there. That's where I fell in love. I was in the stores. I was, watching Ross supply makeup. I was, hearing women talk about, their problems, their fears, et cetera. And I was like, oh yeah, wow. The power of beauty, it seems superficial, but actually it is really, life-changing in terms of your confidence, in terms of, your overall feeling of yourself, et cetera. And so I was like, this is where I want to be. I love it. I love makeup. I love beauty. This is it. And from there, it was all about, okay, now I'm focused. Now I know where I'm passionate. And so now I'm going to just hustle my way in. And I loved L'Oreal. They have a whole host of brands. Daria and I worked together at Lancôme. I was there for 8 years, and I was just really learning the industry inside and out, learning my craft, learning how it worked, really just being a sponge and absorbing, and just being there to help, being positive, being eager, being ambitious, and just taking it all in. And I mean, I think that's, for me, it was the critical piece of where I am now. I will say I attribute it to the foundation of really dedicating those early years of just learning and being open to any and everything that came my way. So essentially, I've been at L'Oreal for 20 years. I've been on a host of brands. I've been on Lancôme. I started a line with Michelle Phan with L'Oreal. I've been on Maybelline Global, both developing product and marketing, and now I'm on NYX. I've moved to Los Angeles. Daria, we need to have drinks.
I know, we're like well, Danae, you moved right around the pandemic as well. I moved right before everything shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. New York is gonna miss you, Danae.
Yeah, no, yeah. I've been on both sides, to be quite honest with you, because I moved to LA during a pandemic, so I've been in New York a lot. But
okay, got it.
Yeah, so that's why I'm here. I'm at NYX, and really, it's a dream job, similar to what Daria was saying. It's leading, the full marketing portfolio, the product, the consumer, our social. We're huge on social. And it's about creating passion for makeup and working, you know, with women and men who enjoy it as well. So
love it. So let me ask you both another question, and it has to do with leadership. What is your philosophy on leadership? Both of you all are in leadership roles within your respective organizations, have worked within different divisions, worked within different industries. Has leadership and its definition for you changed as you've progressed in your career? What advice would you give to someone who is in college right now, thinking about in 10 years, I want to be the next Danae, right? And being very ambitious about how they're pursuing their career. What role would leadership for them personally play in getting there?
I mean, I'll start. For me, it's always been people work for people. At the end of the day, yes, you want to be around smart people, you want to be around people who will teach you things, but people come in to work with people and to be connected with people. So I think early in my career, once I realized that instead of focusing so much on, you know, how can I lead that, how can I manage someone, how can I, it was more about forming relationships. It was more inspiring, even those that, you know, that don't work for you or that aren't, you know, that you won't lead. It's about inspiring everyone and forming those relationships. And then word spreads, right? Your network spreads. People will talk about you. So it's really like, I would say, focus on that. Focus on your relationships. Focus on inspiring people. Focus on being authentic to who you are. Focus on working hard, on being positive, and people will want to work for you, with you, put you in charge of things. And so that's kind of always been my guiding light.
Love it.
I think to build on that, because it's true, you have to manage your reputation. The world is small. Like we're literally sitting here, you know, having met like 14 years ago or however long ago it was, which is insane, right? The world is really, really small. But I think you have to really know why you want to lead people. Because at the end of the day, like leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of the people in your charge. And it is so tempting to think that it's about a title or a rank. And frankly, that's the last thing that it's about. So for me, I spend so much time thinking about how can I show up with empathy, because I have to take care of the whole person, not a list of tasks that they're responsible for. Like if someone has a crisis in their family, like you have to be there for them. If, you know, someone is having a really hard time trying to figure out how to navigate the organization, it is your job to be their shepherd. So you know, for me, I start with that. And then, you know, really practically, my job is to keep barriers low, keep clarity high. That's honestly it. If people know what they're doing and they have alignment and they know where to go, and you can kind of keep the roadblocks out of their way, they should be really successful. And I think, you know, more people really need to ask themselves, you know, why do I want to be a leader in the first place? Because it's way more work. It's way, you know, it's way more emotionally involving, and then being, you know, an individual contributor or even, you know, managing a really small team. But you really have to appreciate that. And I agree too, Danae, like I think thinking about leadership, not just as it being lateral or by authority, but by influence as well. I do think it's really important, especially for younger people and people coming into heavily matrixed or really flat organizations, like a place like Facebook, where, you know, managing and leading by authority is often not what you're doing. It's much more by influence.
So, Daria, you just mentioned something that really sticks with me, which is you know, you and I have met each other I think we met at Black Enterprise Conference.
We did.
About 12 or, you know, some years ago. And I've watched your career progress. And I've met you as well over the course of the last maybe 2 or 3 years. And just how important your networks are and where people end up, and building relationships that are rooted in friendship, rooted in support, rooted in your own personal humility. I think over the course of all of our careers, we've probably been humbled by some experience before, but being graceful in that circumstance was really important. And I look at, you know, who we're on the call with today. We have the chief marketing officer, the senior vice president, and then today we just announced that I'm going to be the assistant administrator at the Small Business Administration, leading the Office of Women's Business Ownership for the federal government, which is huge. But when you think back to, and why I'm stressing this is, When you think back to that conference that you go to when you're in college, these are the people 20 years from now that are going to be on this call with you talking about their career, and they're going to be top of game. And leadership is about the long game. It's not about the short game. It's about the long-term investment in meaningful conversations and meaningful relationships that have the potential to materialize or not. And you never know where people are going to go. So it's important for you to treat people with respect. With that being said, I want to ask you all a question about mentorship and the role that mentorship has played in your personal career progression. I know for women of color, particularly in corporate America and even in the entrepreneurial space, which is what Walker's Legacy has been working on, mentorship for us is a lot more difficult to obtain and harder to find. Have you been successful at identifying a mentor at every stage of your career? And if not, what things did you do to get you through those moments that the students can learn from today?
I can start. I mean, I don't know if I had one at every stage of my career that I could have said, this person is my mentor. I think we have to almost redefine that idea. You know, I think that there are a lot of people who can be enhancers for you or expanders for you, people who give you perspective into what's possible. And sometimes those people don't know you, right? And sometimes those people, or you don't have a direct relationship with them. I also think that friendship is just as important, you know, having peer-to-peer relationships where people can help you navigate. And I've had both, I want to be clear, but I think that my perspective about it has really evolved, you know, over the later stages of my career more recently, just because it's not always just this one-to-one person who's just telling you what to do and putting you on the right track. You know, it is sometimes, you know, and I can think of so many people. I mean, Stephanie Davis, who was, you know, my first boss at L'Oreal, and someone Danae and I know both really well. Steph was the first Black woman I had ever worked for. And so much of that was just me being sort of in her shadow, watching her move through the organization, thinking about her posture, how she carried herself, the passion she brought, and the fearlessness she brought to her work, and her willingness to be vocal and opinionated and doing it in the right way. Like, I learned a ton from her. And I think about so many other women in my career at, you know, at Lauder, at Facebook, you know, and even now at Textile Fashion Group, where Christiane Pendarvis, who's the co-president and chief merchandising and design officer for Savage X Fenty, like, she's a frontor to me, you know, and so that never really goes away. I think you really have to think about what it is that you're looking to learn, because we don't know what we don't know. And often figuring out how anyone could be able to help you understand your blind spots, you know, and somebody who's going to be honest with you and say, girl, that wasn't it. Or, you know, like, I wouldn't have tackled it that way. Or, you know, you really should approach it this way. And, you know, having those folks, but I think a lot of times, especially when you're young, you think that it's like this person who's 15 years senior than you and really experienced. And sometimes it's your best friend or the person who sits in the cubicle next to you. And so just expanding how you think about it is really the headline for me.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Daria. I think mentorship is one, you need to define what mentorship is for you. I agree. I've never called it friendtorship, but yes, Daria, that's a perfect word for it. Having peers who you can, you know, speak candidly, who are going to check you as well. And you can have those honest conversations, and it's a bit more of a friend relationship versus having mentors or having champions or sponsors of your career. And those are people who, they're not there to, you know, they're not there to hear about how bad your day was. These are people who you come in and you're like, here's what I'd like to learn from you. Here's who I'd like to be connected to. This is coming up. How can I get there? Where you have specific, like, these are the business questions that I have for you. And you set that up from the very beginning. They're typically busy people. So they're not going to sit and put together that agenda. You need to know what you need from them. You need to have specific questions, and you need, you know, and you share with them some of the things that you're working on so that they have their ears on your career, and they're making sure that they're, you know, putting you in the right rooms and being the voice to say, oh, you know, I know so-and-so and they're great. They would be great for this role. I think you need the combination of both. I would have a network, like you need a village, just like, you know, when you're raising a family, you want a village. It's the same as your career. You want a village of people who are all going to be able to meet your needs in different ways and at different levels.
I love it. I always say mentorship is an intimate relationship as well. I mean, when you think about it, you're sharing things that worked and didn't work for you. You're sharing your successes. You're sharing in a real mentorship relationship. But then you have like the sponsorship, where to your point, I don't necessarily need to hear about how your day is going. But if you ask me to facilitate an introduction, I'm happy to do that. So I think people and students also should think about one, the investment that they're willing to make in building the trust necessary for someone to say, I want you to be your mentor, or I'm willing to be your mentor, and thinking about mentorship as a horizontal situation, meaning your mentors, as well as a vertical situation where women are coming before you and you're able to talk to them. You know, when I first started Walker's Legacy, it was because I reached out to women that I wanted to be like, and none of them responded to my emails. And at the end of the day, I realized it was because they were busy and they didn't know me. And that was why we ended up building a platform, because the ROI for them was that they had an opportunity to share their knowledge with more than just one person. And it also allowed them to have a bigger platform. So I think, you know, finding creative ways to get in front of folks is important. But I always say also that if you really want to get to know me, you should run alongside me. Meaning every time I go somewhere, I should see you there, you know, at the networking reception, working the front desk, you know, doing whatever you're doing to show that you are committed to being in the room and being in the industry. And it's easy to pull you from that, you know, and say, hey, come over here and come to this event. When I see that you're already invested in yourself enough to be in the same spaces that I am. Next, and before we kind of close out this conversation, it is a question about the future of the industry and how students can best prepare themselves. We are right now in the middle of COVID. As you all know, the retail industry has been shocked and rocked to its core. Inevitably, it is going to change. And there are students who are coming out of school in the middle of this, whether it be graduate school, undergraduate. What changes do you all see happening in the industry? And how can a person who is graduating from any of those levels of academic institutions prepare themselves best for what's about to happen next?
I would say there's a couple of things with every tough situation. There's always opportunities, and especially in the beauty industry, things are shifting. I would say two things. So one, there is a shift for experts, like really specializing in areas, not just being a generalist. You know, you have, you know, things are splitting just in the way that you create business in beauty. So, you know, digital looks so different. Social has brought a different distributions and e-commerce. There are so many levels and compartments to that, where I would say is master something, know it well, know it deeply. And then you become a very strong commodity for organizations, because there's a lot of generalists that exist. That's kind of like how I think my generation was kind of schooled into coming into beauty, whereas now, like, it's so important to have those expertise. The second thing is, I think, you know, now with the way that the industry is just opening up to how important diversity really is, you need, like, I guess it goes into bucket two as well, like really like embracing who you are and what makes you different and what you know about yourself, your culture, your nationality, and use that as a tool to bring in knowledge and things that these organizations don't necessarily know because it's so broad. So I guess they go hand in hand, but I think that there's like huge opportunities right now, more than I've ever seen since I've been in beauty, of just like embracing different people from different places, different cultures, different races, to come in and enrich an organization, because it's so important now.
Yeah, I think zooming out, obviously I'm in the e-commerce space. So, and I have been technically for the last almost 5 years, pretty much exclusively. And I think, unfortunately, the pandemic really exacerbated something that was already being challenged. And I think that was, in a way, the signal that transformation needed to happen. And I think that it's given way to opportunities, exactly like Danae said, for this next generation to come in with something new and something different. Specialize for sure. I would tell you even more specifically, learn how companies acquire customers.
Mm.
And so whether it is, and people call it different things. They call it customer acquisition, they call it growth marketing, they call it, e-commerce marketing or digital marketing. There are lots of names for what that means. And so don't let that trip you up. But at the end of the day, spend some time actually learning how companies acquire customers, because once you understand that, you can unlock so much value for pretty much any organization. And frankly, whether you're in an e-com company or you're in a more traditional retail space that's largely, brick and mortar, they're now trying to figure out how to create an e-commerce business, how to deepen their revenue streams online, how to facilitate, more convenience for customers, because folks like Amazon and Walmart have that on lock and have done that for a really long time, right? And so you think about where we are as a culture and a community. We are so much I think, at our crossroads of, luxury being the new convenience, or convenience being the new luxury, I should say, and really thinking about what it is that people need and want and how they get it, and how can you enable that, just with your own experiences. I mean, you all are fully digitally native, and it's so intuitive for you. Like, it's so deep in your muscle memory to think about how to use these surfaces, sort of this like remote control for your life. Like, how does that facilitate a company connecting with a new generation of customers, right? Because we're all ultimately trying to get greater reach, higher relevance with, resonance, and making it all feel like, oh, right, that's the brand for me. And I do, Danae, you're right. Authenticity is critical at this moment in time. You see so many companies, we saw it in the summer, right? In June, where, brands were posting black squares or, posting statements about what was going on in the world. And suddenly this new consciousness we woke up to, everybody kind of had something to say about it. And I think that with that comes a lot of brands that are struggling to figure out how to really do that in the right way, how to be authentic when they do that. And I think they need your voice to be able to surface that message. They don't often have, a lot of people who look like us in the room. And so now is the time to be there and to speak up and to really lend a perspective and an empathy that this industry desperately needs.
I love it. I love it. You all are phenomenal. This has been incredible. I'm so happy that we were able to make this happen. I mentioned that I have so much respect for you both, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of your continued success, because I know that this is just another level for both of you. So I want to thank our featured speakers, Daria Burke, Chief Marketing Officer at JustFab, and Janae Pearson, Senior Vice President at NYX, and Senior Vice President, Global Marketing, Product Development, and Social at NYX Professional Makeup. Again, my name is Natalie Cofield, founder and CEO of Walker's Legacy, and I will kick it off now to Maya.
Thank you so much, Natalie, Daria, and Danae. That was amazing. My mom and I always shop JustFab, and NYX is a heavy staple throughout my makeup collection. So being able to hear, your insights on the why behind leadership and the future of our industry and things students such as myself can bring to that was honestly a dream.